Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Yvonne Trost. Yvonne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, sure. Just a moment, because then I want to get to any questions you have or they might have. So, right now, I am a happiness coach and a hypnotherapist. But I used to be an IT and business strategy consultant. So, I've made quite a bit of change in my life, and I want to help as many people as I can find like who their authentic self is, what their purpose is, and how they can live a limitless life because it just keeps getting better.
It's a great introduction and probably one of the better job titles that I've ever heard, a happiness coach. How did that come about?
Well, for 25 years, I learned that I was living a life for somebody else, not anybody's fault, but my parents wanted me to be safe. So get a good job, buy, a home, have kids. But year after year, I was just like, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't what I want to do. But the fear of the unknown kept me trapped. And I won't go through the whole story, but divorce was involved and my world got shaken up a little bit and I started going into yoga and meditation. And from yoga and meditation, I learned about manifesting and quantum physics. And then I manifested a man into my life who was getting trained to be a hypnotherapist. And then I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." So I went and I'm like, just help me let go of my need to go to Starbucks so often. But then what ended up happening, Thomas, is I let go of the fear of the unknown. Things that were buried in my subconscious that were holding me back, I had no idea. And that's my goal now, is just to help everybody do the same so they can be their happiest self.
Well, that sounds amazing. If people have something similar to what you did, which is maybe unconscious beliefs that are holding them back, how would you? What's the best advice that you can give those people?
Oh my goodness. So there's a lot, and we don't have as much time as I would love to have today. Um, I think that if you have any fear or judgment of yourself or others, you can be pretty darn sure that there's something in your subconscious mind holding you back. You're only born with two fears, Thomas, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. So if you have any other fears and there's not a lion chasing you or you aren't, facing imminent death, there's probably something going on. We actually have developed several free resources. If you go to unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz, there's a really neat quiz. It's only like 12 questions, takes 3 minutes, and it just asks you some questions about your way of being. And in so less than 5 minutes, you can find out if there's something holding you back. If perhaps you haven't filled your self-love cup full enough, or if perhaps you're going through life on autopilot, it's gonna show you that. And you'll get some lovely insights there that we also have at unlocklimitlessyou.com/resources. There's a tab, which my favorite thing that I created is called the limiting belief lie detector. So you can think of any problem that you have, and quite often it's your subconscious mind's solution. So your problem consciously is your subconscious mind's solution to something it fears is going to be worse. So if you want to be vulnerable, Thomas, if you have any fears or troubles and you want to give us an example, we could walk through it, or I could just throw out an example. But people can go there and get the limiting belief lie detector for themselves and run through it is another great way.
Okay. Well, a common one for people would typically be fear of failure. So I'll say that one as a what would you say as an example?
Yes, so fear of failure. So what might you do if you're afraid of failure? What might you do or not do?
I suppose worry would be an easy one.
Yeah.
You may not necessarily change anything, but you might be concerned about a future something happening that perhaps is failure for you.
Yeah. So think about people worrying, stress, anxiety. Those things are terrible. They don't feel good. But your subconscious mind is trying to keep you doing the same thing that you've always been doing. So your subconscious mind is the most risk averse thing in your body. It doesn't care if you're happy or if you're sad. It only cares that you're alive. So if you're miserable and stressed or worried and you're alive, it's like, great, you're alive. Don't change anything because it's causing you to worry, to not take a step because it fears the unknown. It fears something could be worse, right? So if you're worried, like you'll mess up in a presentation or on a podcast, like say I was super worried, right? Which I'm not. Maybe I used to be. If I was super worried, be like, oh, they might judge you. You might say something wrong. Like I had this a lot because I got grounded if I didn't get straight A's. So I'm a recovering perfectionist, Thomas. What we have to realize is it's just our subconscious mind trying to protect us. And our subconscious mind is usually 6 or 7 years old. And it actually doesn't know how old you are. So it'd be the little Thomas or the little Yvonne thinking, somebody's going to make fun of you. Somebody's going to bully you. You're going to get in trouble. Just don't do it. So it's a solution to something it fears is worse. And the reason it's built that way, because our brains have been around for a long time, not our specific one, but the human race, and it was built for survival. So, Thomas, if you were worried that you would get up and you're in a tribe and you were worried like you would, I don't know, you want to get enough berries or you couldn't catch whatever animal it is that you needed to catch for tonight's dinner. And that kept happening and over again, and you were just a drain on the tribe, what might happen?
You'd get kicked out of the tribe.
Yeah, and then what happens?
You would die.
Yeah. We are the most fascinating creature, but we don't take human being 101 or 201 or 301. I didn't have that. So I'm in the US. We did not have human being 101 in school. Do they have that in the UK?
No. We got
No.
maths and English and science and stuff.
Yeah. How to make, how to acquire dirty money or coins. That's what we're taught because that's what we feel survival is. But then that's why we have so many miserable people in the world, right? So many people worrying that they don't have to, or like taking medicine that they don't necessarily have to just quiet the mind. And so what we do, my company with my partner, it's called Limitless You. That URL is taken, so it's unlock Limitless You. But we believe everybody's limitless. And what we have to do is we have to teach each other what our superpowers are inside of us that we just don't even know. So in the US, we have not cloned a human being. Have they cloned a human being yet in the UK, Thomas?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Have we built rocket ships in this world?
Yes.
Yes. So what do you think is more complicated, a human being or a rocket ship?
As I understand it, the human brain is the most complex thing in existence. That's what I've heard a quote that that's the case.
Yeah. But we're not spending any time learning about it. So that's what we do. We help people understand like how does it work in general, the human being, and then how does their specific human being work? And we help them go to their subconscious mind to figure out what's been going on back there because the little mini you inside of you is just doing the best it can. So you got a 6 or 7 year old trying to fly something more complicated than a rocket ship through life. That's a situation. That's you this worry example. That's what's happening. I want you to just imagine a little mini Thomas at the helm of a rocket ship trying to figure out what in the world is going on. So that's, I don't know, that helps.
Helps a lot.
Hopefully it does.
And yeah, it's a great answer. You mentioned one thing which I love to talk about in a previous answer, which is about purpose or your true calling. And
Yeah,
since you've given such a great answer in the previous one, I'd love to pick your brains about that topic if that's okay.
absolutely. Um, in the US, and I'm sure it's similar elsewhere, like in we call it kindergarten, like the first year you go to school, right? They're like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And we have all these really cool ideas, and our imagination is free usually. We haven't been quite like, like I don't know. I say we're born perfect love and light, but then fear and judgment surround us in the world. But kindergarten, we're not maybe not quite there yet. But then after that, they don't ask you what you want to be when you grow up. Kind of grades are you getting? What is your best friend doing? What sports are you on? What this is you on? All this stuff. So one of my favorite teachers, Dr. Gabor Mate, he says you need two things as a kid. You need attachment, right? So we don't die, like we just went through that example, right? We know that one. Babies can't survive on their own. What we don't always hear about is authenticity. And authenticity is a word that's kind of like self-love now. It's like overused and abused, and everybody's saying it, and who knows what it means anymore. But it is what your true calling is. It's what like lights you up and makes you glow, and you just flow through life when you're doing it. And we have to start listening to that. We're not necessarily attuned to ourselves, right? Because we're always getting pulled in different directions. Like I was, like my mom and my dad loved me to death, but they didn't have that much. Grow that actually isn't to death. I say some things and people are like, what is she talking about? Herding cats. And I'm from the Midwest in the US. We have a lot of funny sayings. So we aren't taught necessarily to like nurture that because of the fear and the judgment. So most likely, if you had parents that were loving, they also instilled fear and judgment because they didn't know better. It's not their fault. They wanted you to be successful and survive and thrive. And inadvertently, they crushed your authenticity because they didn't know better, because they weren't given that gift. Right. So it goes back to my first point. If there is fear or judgment, you can't be in your purpose and in your flow. Right. Because if you're in your purpose and you're aligned and you're attuned, you know that it's what's meant to be. Oh, there's actually another little thing I did. So if you go to that unlocklimitlessyou.com/resources, there's something called Discover Your Why. If you have anything that you're wanting to do, Thomas, like what's your big goal this year?
I think perhaps a something adding on something to the business. So adding a new branch to the business.
Okay, adding a new branch to the business. So what you would do is you'd say, and I don't know if we want to go through it all, but you would say, well, why is that important? Let's just do a couple. Why is adding a new branch to the business important?
Sort of diversifying the revenue of the company.
And why is diversifying the revenue of the company important?
For stability,
And why is stability important?
so that the business doesn't fail.
So we'll pause there. And maybe Thomas will continue. That's a cliffhanger. Come to next episode and he'll answer the next ones. But if you go to the resource that I told you about, you ask yourself that in that sequence 7 times. And
Okay.
quite often you get to the root of what your purpose or your why is. And when I did it for myself, what I found out it was human connection, right? And so I'm like, well, I was trying to connect humans, but quite often I had to worry about people's bottom line, and humans were fighting because they were competing over that dirty money and dirty coins again. So I'm like, well, that doesn't really work for my purpose. So how can I work with humans to connect them to themselves so that they can better connect to others? So if you think about your purpose or your career, you might think you know what it is and you might be well intentioned. If you just use that little simple exercise, if you want to work with me, you can. We use hypnosis and memory consolidation. That will help you. But if you just want to get started, that's one way to do it, to get to your why, right? So you probably have heard of Simon Sinek. He's awesome too. We do kind of what similar, but we get to your subconscious and your root, right? So you got to go to the root of it. And when you go to the root of it, that's when you start finding out what those limiting beliefs are. Because most often, what you're doing, what you think is your purpose or your career, it's not designed by you. It's designed by that 6 or 7-year-old subconscious mind of yours who has a limiting belief based upon something or some things that shaped them through life. So if you don't feel like you're in your flow, there's probably some work to be done there. And it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. That's why we're here, right? To experience and to grow and to learn. So that's how I would get started. But there's all sorts of other things we could talk about.
Well, you keep giving me questions to follow up on with your answers, so it's easy. Great answer. And one of the things I often ask about is the what would you say the limiting beliefs or the voices in the head that tells you you can't do something. Um,
Yeah.
I know that we've to some degree we have talked about the unconscious, and I think there's probably some crossover there. But do you make a distinction between that voice which tells you you can't do something when perhaps maybe even you've gone through your purpose and you think, I want to do that, and then immediately after someone in your head says you can't do that.
Yeah, that's the same. It's the same thing. Subconscious, unconscious, that little voice in your head. And again, it's just trying to protect you. What I, you've heard this saying before. Once you get to the root of it and you start understanding this human being 101 into 201, you can start believing and understanding why things happen for you, not to you. Right? It's really important. Not only do you listen to that little voice and pull it in close, because that is just, you have to reparent that little voice, that little you inside of you. It's also important to listen to your body. So your body doesn't speak English or Spanish or have a British accent, nothing like that. But it'll communicate to you through physical sensations or emotions, right? And anytime there is fear or judgment, rather than trying to distract yourself from it or to numb out, like I used to drink way too much wine and binge watch Netflix. Don't do that, right? People will maybe overwork or they'll smoke or they'll overeat or whatever those things are that are distracting you, they're not helping you. So when you have that fear, that judgment, that little voice, what I want you to do, so you'll like this one. I changed Einstein's E equals MC squared. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Okay. So the energy you want in your life, this is how people can remember it. Everybody can remember E equals MC squared. The energy you want in your life is mindful thinking raised to the power. This is an important part. Compassion and curiosity. So I want you to remember that little voice in your head. It's just a little Thomas. It's just a little you. It's only 6 or 7. And same thing for anybody else. Say you're like at work and somebody's annoying you or your spouse or your child. Like the life hack when you want to be like angry or upset is start with compassion and just look at them, no matter what their age, like a little 6 or 7 year old, like maybe even your own child, to break that, to break that little voice, that little fear, anything, right? To have compassion for yourself and for them if there's somebody else involved. And then curiosity. Bring it in closer. Oh, interesting. Yvonne said, I'm only born with a fear of falling in loud noises. So I'm afraid of this. I wonder why. Most likely it's an untruth that I've been taught or told. And so you pull it in closer, that little voice. You give it a hug. I highly recommend hugging yourself. Like it feels really good. Um, Look yourself in the eyes and get curious. Okay, I hear you. I understand that you're scared. Let's think about why we might be scared. And let's think about, is that really true or not? And when you pull it in closer with compassion and curiosity, most of the time you realize your brain is just running on these automatic programs. You don't even know about it, right? And usually you're going to get an early warning system like signal. Like mine is in my heart or in my solar plexus. Like when something really bothers me, I start to like feel a little tension there. I'm like, okay, now it's prepare to get curious. Because the old Yvonne would have like everybody would have been like, prepare to run. Right. And I'm about connection with humans, not making them run away. So that's what I'd say is like get curious and have compassion for that little voice and know that it's just scared. You can
I
help it.
love your E equals MC squared example. I think that's brilliant. And
Thank you.
yes, a little trigger for people, and especially since it starts with being mindful or aware of when you're doing it and then what to do. I think that's great. But my 6 or 7 year old unconscious will not let me get away with not asking a happiness coach about happiness. So I have to ask you about it. It's a definitional one to start with. What is happiness?
Well, for me or in general,
Go with whatever you feel.
what I would say is happiness is so unique to every individual. And unfortunately, social media and we're like the most technically connected world we've ever had in history, but we're the most disconnected from ourselves and from the authentic selves of others. So happiness is not what you see on social media. Happiness is what not what Thomas defines it, and it's not what I define it as. You have to define happiness for yourself, right? And so how do you do that? Well, the classics, when do you lose track of time? What makes you smile? What makes you laugh? What makes you tingle inside? What makes you feel love? What makes you want to give love in a healthy way, right? That's what happiness is. But you can't buy it. You can't steal it. You have to discover it for yourself. And that's why I do the work that I do at Limitless You, because most people don't know what it is for them. Most people spend, and I did too. And if you're listening, you probably are spending years chasing something that you think's going to make you happy. And then you get it. You're like, wait a minute, that didn't work. So now let me get something else. Everything that you
The
need to
uh,
be happy is inside you. You just have to find it.
the hedonic treadmill was what I was going to say. The people chasing happiness only to chase it again once they thought that they were going to get it and then they didn't. But
That's
it's a good
another
follow-up
good
question.
thing. Like that questions that I was telling you to do with your purpose, do that with whatever you think is happiness for you. That's huge. That's going to help you with purpose too. So if a lot of stability makes you happy, I'm thinking about your example, or maybe somebody's like a lot of money or big house or, you know, family, whatever you think makes you happy. The next, like in my old world, everybody wanted like promotion and then they got it and didn't really do anything for them, but make them more stressed. Whatever it is, go to that unlocklimitlessyou.com/resources, do the discover your why and put that in there, right? Because you can start with this makes me happy and then ask yourself, well, why does that make me happy? And why is that important? What is that? And you get to the root of it. So if you don't know what makes you happy, which you're not alone, I ask Thomas when people come to work with me, like, what's your magic wish? Because that's what we work on. We're magic. I'm also a magician. People tell me that after they're done working with us at Limitless You, because they're like, wait a minute, you're a magician. And now I am too, because I teach people how to find the magic within them. But I ask what your magic wish is. And a lot of times I ask what would the perfect life look like for you? And people can answer usually very quickly with what they don't want or with what they want to get rid of. And sometimes it takes some thoughtful guidance and time to help people imagine, okay, that's table stakes. That's definitely, of course. But what do you want? What will make you happy? Not the lack of something, but the energy of something that you want in your life.
I was with you with the first part of your answer. I sort of the flow, the lack of time and the flow state and everything. And then towards the end, when you asked about what is it that makes you happy, I kind of lost the meaning of it again. So
Well, what do you think
if you
makes you
could,
happy, Thomas? He's like,
Um,
I'm never having her on this podcast again. I'm supposed to ask the questions.
no, it's refreshing. My family makes me happy.
Okay. And why is your family important to you?
I think family is the most, well, looking after your little ones is the most meaningful thing that you can do on the planet. Doesn't have to be for everyone, but that's my position.
Okay. And why is looking after your little ones so meaningful to you?
I think that with kids, they look up to their parents as like that you're their whole world. Like there's nothing more important to them than their mum and dad. And to sort of shirk that responsibility or not take it seriously is just unthinkable from my perspective.
Hmm. And what makes it so rewarding to you to have them look up to you and think that you're their whole world?
It's probably the feeling I get when it's done.
Hmm. So we're gonna again, here's a cliffhanger. We're gonna pause there, but I want you to keep going with that, and especially around family. If you're listening and you haven't been taking care of yourself, or if you feel like you're working too much, or if any of the things that you're doing that are making you unhappy, you say you're doing it for your family, right? Because it's selfish not to do that. What I want you to know is that the most valuable thing you can give your children is the authentic, happy you, right? I used to think that I had all the excuses like I can't work out, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do all those things because I have to take care of my kids and my household, right? Especially after my divorce. And what I realized was that yoga helped me realize this, right? It's actually selfish not to put your self health first. Because if you don't, how old are your children?
They are 8, 6, and 3.
Whoa, you're in the heart of it. I have a 17-year-old and an almost 14-year-old. Um, they're not necessarily listening to what you say, but they are watching what you do. And so if you're listening, I want you to ask yourself, do I want my children to find their authentic, happy self and live their authentic, happy life? Or do I want them to sacrifice because they think they need to make money for their children? Like, what do you want for your children? Do you want them to find their authentic, happy self or sacrifice it if you have to sacrifice it for stability in a big business and a big house and all that? What's more important, you think, for your kiddos?
Everyone wants happiness for their kids, right?
Yeah.
Well,
We
most
should,
normal people do anyway.
yeah, true, true. We just have to remind ourselves what that really is. So back this is see, we were landing on it, right? We feel like happiness is like, oh, I can take them on a bunch of trips and I can take them to the big university and then we have a big house, we have all this stuff. And then if you talk to your kids, they just want time with you. Well, until they become teenagers and they don't have anything to do with you. But that's because perhaps they haven't been nurtured as much as you could have. So again, no judgment, but just get curious and compassionate. And anything that you think is happiness, that's a great litmus test if you have kids. Would I want what I'm doing to myself for my kids? And if the answer is no, they're watching and they're learning. So if you won't love yourself fully and find your authentic self and find your purpose for you, do it for your kids because that's what you want for them, right? Isn't it so
It's a
ironic
great
what we
answer.
do?
Yeah.
Human beings are so
Um,
interesting.
yeah, you've done something very clever there, and I noticed it, but it did work regardless. But um, your answers are brilliant. And for those people who do want to, I know you've reference some stuff on the site, but for those people who want to follow you or go on the website, where do they go?
So just look and find unlocklimitlessyou.com, right? So think about, okay, you want to be limitless, right? So everybody say limitless you. And we help you unlock limitless you. So that's how you can remember it. Unlock limitless you. And then, we have the socials for that on all of them, but you can also, my name is Yvonne Marie Trost. There is a Yvonne Trost in Germany. That's not me. I'm Yvonne Marie Trost in the US. I'm happy to connect with you any which way. Whether you want to go to our website, you can book a free discovery call. Definitely take the self-love quiz. Really, you could call it self-discovery quiz if you're like, oh, I don't believe the self-love stuff. Just think it just is /quiz anyway. So unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz. Go take that. And if you want to talk, you same thing, unlocklimitlessyou.com/call, and we'll set up some time.
Okay. And do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Closing thoughts. Hmm. Don't wait. Don't wait until the kids graduate. Oh, I rhymed. I love it when I rhyme. Like I was going to wait 7 to 10 years before I started living my purpose and my dream. I'm like, oh, I got to wait until my kids get out of college and then I can start. Or I always had an excuse. Oh, I can't go back to school for psychology because that'll take too long. It'll be too much money and blah, blah, blah. I didn't even have to go back. I just became a hypnotherapist and I'm helping people rewire their brains that psychologists don't even get to study because it hasn't made its way to university yet. Plasticity is still relatively new for people believing it. So don't wait. And if you're like, oh, she doesn't know me, she doesn't know my life, ask yourself, why are you waiting? And then if you don't want to call me, call Thomas or somebody that cares about you and ask them if you should wait. Don't wait to figure out what makes your heart sing and to start living.
Yvonne, as a happiness coach, you have made me much happier today. So I very
Oh,
much appreciate that.
yay. I love it.
And you've been an amazing guest. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we got to connect.